Here we have the string of hearts or the chain of hearts. I've also heard it called the rosary vine. Scientifically, it's called Ceropegia woodii, but who cares about that? It's a string of hearts, right? The leaves look like tiny little hearts. It's a really cute plant. It will trail, and they grow quite fast during the growing season, which is the spring through summer months. But let's get into the care instructions for this really neat plant. First off, you're going to need bright light. Okay, these plants are semi-succulent. They do store water in their leaves, and they're used to a very bright light location. Now, because these trail, oftentimes people want to hang them from a ceiling, which is perfectly fine. However, we want to make sure that we are hanging them low enough in your window so that the top of the pot can see out of the sky. All of these leaves right here, this is where the majority of the leaves are. So they all need to photosynthesize. So if we have them hung up too high, like above the window, and this part is the only thing that's below the window, like looking out at the sky, it's not going to be able to photosynthesize enough for the entire plant to stay alive. Now, if you have a really full and long mature plant where the majority of the leaves are below the pot, then that's perfectly fine to hang it up high. In any case, just to make sure that wherever you have it, the majority of the leaves are able to photosynthesize. This is a very bright light plant. As far as watering goes, we did mention that it was semi-succulent, which means that it has water storage in its leaves. So they're pretty drought tolerant. We like to water these year-round when they're about 75% dry. If you let them dry at 100% dry, that's perfectly fine as well. They're very forgiving. They're used to that type of abuse. But if you let them dry about 75%, this is what's going to be best for their growth habit. They're going to grow best when you're not letting them dry out 100% between watering. Closer to that 75 mark is best. Now, if you wait too long to water these plants, the leaves will become very wrinkly. They'll become very limp. Right now, if you could feel them, they'd be very plump and full. They're full of that water. But when they're devoid of that moisture, when they've gone through all their stores, then the leaves will become very wrinkly. And that's a good indication, oh, I've let this go too long. I need to give it a really good soak. No matter what time of the year that you are watering your plant, when it has dried out appropriately, we want to do a full soak, which means that every bit of soil that's in the pot needs to be saturated. Soak it, soak it, soak it, of course, and let all the excess water drain out the bottom here. As far as repotting goes, we like to do that about every 2 years, or when the roots are starting to come out of this bottom drainage hole here. And I like to use just straight cactus soil. Because they retain so much water, because they store so much water in their leaves, I find it easiest for myself if I just do straight cactus soil. It's going to drain very sharply, which is great when you're dealing with semi-succulents and succulent plants. It's important to note that also when we repot, we're just going up one pot size, maybe 2 pot sizes at most. This is a 4-inch plant. We would go up to a 5 or a 6-inch pot at most. Bigger than that, then you're increasing your chances of root rot, which we don't want, of course. As far as fertilizing goes, we just use a general purpose houseplant fertilizer, diluted quite heavily, probably even heavier than what's directed on the packaging. You can't really underdo it, but you can overdo it. So it's always good to just back it off a little bit. These aren't heavy feeders, so just keep that in mind when you're thinking about fertilizing your plant. They will benefit from fertilizing, of course, throughout the spring and the summer months when they're actively growing, but they're not the biggest feeders in the world, so don't make it like your highest priority. But that's going to do it for the care instructions for the string of hearts. If you already grow this plant, let me know how you do it in the comments below. You can also ask any questions that you might have about this really cool trailing plant, and I'll do my best.